Hello everyone, can you hear me, can you see me, as I always ask when I start a video call. Quick question before we start, just a little bit of technicalities. How many English speakers do we have in an audience? Do we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Okay, we have a couple of those, so I'll keep my presentation in English. Thank you very much for joining, and I'm fully aware that the topic that I want to discuss with you today, how to build your business continuity and disaster recovery plan, and what are the most common mistakes we saw with my team over time, is the topic that we know we could spend the whole year discussing it. Because there are always different angles to approach some things, but we've also spotted some patterns in things that are most common mistakes, or with things that can be easily improved when thinking about your business continuity. So how quickly can we restore the data in a case of incident that makes you lose access to all or part of your data? So let's cover 10 of those most common mistakes. And I wanted to start with a Latin sentence that my sister told me when I was very, very young kid, and probably some of you that are more interested in history heard it a lot. Si vis pacer, para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. And I think that the most common mistake, number one mistake that we make when we prepare our business continuity plan is that we are not really thinking about war. We are thinking about most common risks. We are thinking about most obvious risks. We are thinking about the things that happened to us in the past, but we are not going to extreme scenarios. We are not asking ourselves, what if equivalent of nuclear war happens in my organization? That's why when thinking about your data security, how I want to back them up and how I want to be able to restore them, we need to think about extremes. And such an extreme, in my opinion, that we need to apply is selective risk analysis and thinking about risks that can happen for us. So when we are thinking about all the different reasons why we want to have backup in the first place, like let's say I have large infrastructure, I have endpoints, I have my servers, databases, I'm using some SaaS services, and we come to realization, okay, we need to back them up. But why? Okay, we can have outage of some sorts. It's normal, our server can break down, we can have power outage, that's why we need our backup. We think about natural disasters. When you actually look into business continuity plan of most of Polish businesses, the flood and the fire are most common things that we think about when we think about risk. And most importantly, that's the number one risk. We want to have auditor of our back. So we want to make sure that we can just stay compliant and pass our next audit. So we focus on only those three things, or mostly on those three things. However, those are not our most common reasons for downtimes anymore. Because actually, if we look at the data from the last year, we can see that most common issues are related to human errors and human involvement, either intentional or unintentional. We have more and more ransomware attacks. 25% of all the security breaches last year were related to ransomware attacks, and in 49% we had some sort of external actor that stolen our credentials. So we really need to think about the rest of the things. First of all, ransomware, and it's good that we are talking more and more about ransomware and how to protect from it, even on this conference, but it's still not enough, because we are doing lots of talking, we are not doing much things to actually protect from it. And we are still ignoring the fact that accidental deletion is still number one reason for losing the data. Because how often we have a fire in our server? Probably not that often. Who had fire in their server room last year? One person. Awesome. I'm sorry to hear that, but it's not that often. but it's very common that somebody deleted something important by accident or overwritten important data by accident. So let's stop thinking about those basic things and let's move on to the next category of risks. Next thing, not classifying the data when to backup. When we say, okay, I'm fully aware of the risks, I know about ransomware, I know that my employee can delete something by accident, or I know that my employee can delete something because they hate me, we say, okay, so let's make backup in place. Let's have backup in place. So I'm going to back up all my data. But what do you mean by all your data? I'm going to back up everything. Okay, that's the one way to approach it, but the challenge related to it is that if we do it, we are not able to run backups extremely frequently. Because, first of all, question, do you know how long backup runs in your organization nowadays? If I were to ask you, who knows answer to this question? How long does the backup take for me? Nobody? One person. Awesome. Congrats for the person that knows. But then the question is, okay, but how long is this? And can we make it shorter? Because if we want to back up everything equally, then it's probably going to take us more than 24 hours to make this backup. And as a result, in case of security incident, we are losing up to 24 hours worth of data, because we are losing all the data between now and our last backup. So more often we make a backup, it's better for us. And that's why we should categorize our data into our mission critical data, which is the core of our infrastructure, into the parts which are related to our ongoing projects, into the parts which are just archive, and we should back them up separately and apply different backup frequency for those. Because if it's something, our mission critical data, that our company stands for, we should back it up every hour, every 13 minutes. With the newest technologies, we can sometimes make even snapshots every minute. If it's something that's our archive, we don't need to even back it up every day. We can back it up every week, and that's still fine. And based on this, we can tailor backup frequency to data. And then if the incident comes, and the question is how quickly we can restore our mission critical data and what it includes, we can say we are losing only 1 hour worth of data and we are able to restore it within 3 hours because we are treating it as a separate piece of data. We are not treating it as this nameless conglomerate of data. Next thing, backup frequency is not the best possible one. So I've already explained why we should make backups as often possible, because the more often we make the backups, the less data we lose in a case of incident. However, very often this backup duration, this backup frequency is not as good as we want. When I've spoken to companies, even on this conference today, they told me, we have good backup solution. We run backups once per week. So it means that if you run your backups on Saturdays and you have security incident on Friday, you've lost the whole week's worth of data, yes? It's not that good. I can only imagine what is the cost for your company to lose 1 week worth of data across the whole company. Okay, so the question is, why that happens? First of all, we are using outdated technologies. Many companies are still using self-made scripts to run their backups. We are lacking the automation in our backups. There has to be human involved to make sure that they are running according to schedule, which is not that good. We have some technical limitations, either coming from our infrastructure or coming from some artificial limits, and we don't have this data classification that I mentioned. So what should we do? First of all, think about how you can improve your backup duration. Maybe we should upgrade our technology. Maybe we should upgrade our infrastructure. It is sometimes an investment. I'm fully aware of it. And nobody can put this out of their pocket money to upgrade their whole backup technology. But if we are talking about the jump from making backup once per week to making backup a few times per day, we are talking about significant improvement. Next thing, consider implementing incremental backups. In many cases, when we think about backup, we think about just copying all the data. With current technologies, we are able to make incremental backups that only consist of files that have been added or modified since the last backup you've made. That means shorter backup duration, that means smaller size of the copy, and we can increase the frequency. We can monitor our backup duration and see, and knowing how long does the backup actually take for us, we can optimize it and decide, okay, if it takes only 4 hours to run this type of backup, maybe we can run backup every 5 hours, not every day. And change the frequency around your average and enjoy improved recovery point objective, so in case of incident, you're losing less data. Next thing, lack of automation in backup process. And this point can be summarized in one sentence, which frightens me. Average backup frequency, if we are running backups manually, if the person is involved and actually needs to come and click a button, is 6 months. Meaning that in your company, if you have a guy responsible for running backups, and you have no automation to help him in running those backups, those only happen every 6 months. So if the day comes that you have incident, and you need to recover the data, even if you have business continuity plan that says we run backup once per week, you may realize that the last backup has been run in January or in December. Not that great. So if we have automation in place, we can obviously mitigate it because we are not dependent on human and human error in keeping this backup frequency. Next mistake, insufficient storage protection. So in many cases, when we make the backup and we fetch all the data, which truth be told is not a rocket science, then we say, okay, we're just going to upload it into the cloud or put it in the server, and that's all. But keeping data in one storage, whether it's cloud or on-premise, is not enough. And you need to protect this data, even if it's in your own storage, in your own server. And by protecting of this data, I don't mean pack it in the zip, add password to that zip, and you're done. But think about what more you can do. For example, more and more common trend is so-called 3-to-1 backup. So-called making backup of your backup. So even if you have one storage, when you keep your data and you trust that storage, you should still make clone of it, mirror of it, to another storage type, to another location, so in case of ransomware attack or in case of outage, you're not dependent on that one storage and whether it survives or not. The more storages you have, the better. And this process can be easily automated nowadays as well. Another thing, expand your encryption. Zip file is not encryption. Make sure that you have encryption of data both at rest and in transit, preferably with multiple encryption keys. And last but not least, immutable storage. So nowadays we are able to keep our data in a storage when we are only able to add data to it once, and after we've added some object like a file, we cannot later on modify or delete this file. This means that even if you have malicious actor in your company, and people say, okay, what can I do if my employee wants to screw me over? If you have immutable storage in place, your backups are still sacred. They are still untouchable. And we can implement file system that makes sure that your backup is stored in a way that files are non-readable, non-executable, giving you protection from any ransomware attack. So even if malicious actor wants to launch attack from within your storage, you're secured. So as you can see, there's plenty of things you can do. Is there a person here who does all of this and is not my colleague? Is there a person here who does at least one of those things for your backups? One person. That's great. That's great and that's sad. Moving on. Too narrow disaster recovery scenarios. So typically, when we make a backup and we build the whole plan, and let's even say that the frequencies is good, and the storage is safe, but the problem might be that your data, you're assuming that you're going to restore your data to your own infrastructure. Okay, but what if you lost your infrastructure? What if we have this meteorite coming, fire, or storm, and you're going to lose access to it? You need to have disaster recovery scenarios that are prepared for multiple different scenarios. For example, you can make so-called cross-restore. So you can take data from one service, from one part of your infrastructure, and restore it into another. Maybe you are facing ransomware attack. Okay, and when were you infected? Okay, we realized it's due to vulnerability that happened 3 months ago, which is very common. So probably you don't want to restore from the last backup you made because it's still infected. You want to go back in time 3 months and restore from it. You want to be able to switch from cloud to on-premise and from on-premise to cloud, because those great cloud providers that we all trust, they can still have an outage. Azure one day can have an outage too. You need to have option, what are you going to do if Azure or AWS has an outage. And you need to be able to restore data on granular level without data overwrite. What it means? It means that if you lost just one important thing, like your employee was angry and they deleted one important project, one important file, you don't need to be forced to restore the whole infrastructure. You should be able to restore just this one file that you need. So there are multiple different possibilities that you should be prepared for, and probably you are not. Why? Because we are focusing in our business continuity plan on coming back to our status quo, but we are not thinking about what happens in between, about some temporary solution that allows us to get back to work as soon as possible, even if we need to make a compromise and restore just part of the data or migrate infrastructure for some time. Another thing, not testing backups. In your entire life, who tested their backup? Like, not you tested backup because you actually needed to restore the data, but you made a backup and then you wanted to make sure that it works. Who did that? One person. Not great. Important thing is that all the different vendors, even cloud ones, that you are working with, that you are trusting, they have major outages, major vulnerabilities discovered every month. Every month. And this means that you don't need to use your backup just once per year when the auditor comes. You need to make sure that it operates at any point in time. So it shouldn't be anything unusual to make test restore of your infrastructure or just part of it at least once per quarter or once per month. There are also modern backup solutions that allow you to automatically restore, let's say, virtual machine and make sure that it works as it should. Next thing, lack of proper backup monitoring. In many cases, we assume that backup works if it was finished. But we are not making sure that it is running according to schedule. We are not making sure that it covers all the data we want. And that's why you should have some monitoring in place. You should have some possibility from anywhere in the world to be able to see if your backup is running according to schedule in a complete way, protecting all the data you need. Because we too often treat backup as once are done. I've set up my automated backups, or I told my employee to make those backups, and then I forgot about it. So you need to monitor those backups day by day and make sure that they are working properly. No scalability of your backups. So another mistake, business continuity plans are typically created in a company once, and they are reviewed every year, but they are not technically reviewed in terms of is our infrastructure really growing according with our needs. And there's a whole list of questions that you should ask yourself when it comes to, is my backup scalable? Obviously, I'm not going to walk through all of this because I have limited time, but just be aware that your backup should be scalable, and you should even expect your company to grow faster than you think. And last thing, trusting cloud vendors too much. When we are working with companies like Microsoft, Atlassian, and similars, we assume that they are running cloud backup over infrastructure and that they are protecting our data as part of it. However, first of all, if we look at those magic numbers here, they are showing us number of incidents that those vendors have each year, demonstrating that, first of all, you cannot trust them because they are not ready to protect your data. And secondly, they are having something called shared responsibility model, when in their terms of service, they are telling you, we are just taking care of our system, but what your users do and your data is your responsibility. So if you think that Microsoft is going to help you with your data if you have an outage, you might be disappointed. That's all from my end, but it's just touching the subject. So if you want to know more, we have a stand of Xopero Software here at the Wisła Hall. We have blue balloons, so it's easy to spot us. Feel free to come over and have a chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.